Hi, and welcome to the Project Success webinar, Lesson Plan Development Aligned to the Content Connectors. We are excited to share information about key components of lesson plan development aligned to the content connectors. We will discuss what needs to be included in a lesson plan, what areas to focus on, and how to find appropriate resources. We invite you to join us again for open office hours on October 17th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to continue our discussion on lesson plan development. Project Success will host teacher experts who design lesson plans using the content connectors daily, who will share their techniques, resources, and easy-to-implement ideas for your classroom.
My name is Ashley Quick, and this is my first year with Project Success. Prior to joining the Project Success team, I was a special education resource teacher for 10 years. I also have 3 years of experience in higher education custom publishing.
And my name is Meredith Keating-Merck, and this is my 3rd year with Project Success. Before that, I was a special educator for 8 years and a building level administrator, special education coordinator for 3 years.
Today we'll discuss topics related to lesson plan development aligned to content connectors. We'll talk about universal design for learning, components of a lesson plan, including unpacking a content connector, using academic vocabulary and core vocabulary, identifying access skills. We'll also review some lesson plan templates, resources, and next steps. We hope you leave today's webinar being able to identify best practice for lesson plan development using principles of universal design for learning, unpack a critical content connector to identify access for all levels of learners, create a lesson plan that includes access skills aligned to a critical content connector for all levels of learners, and identify and locate resources to guide lesson plan development.
Project Success supports teachers and administrators in Indiana by providing resources, professional development, and technical assistance in designing instruction and developing curriculum that is aligned with alternate standards for students with significant cognitive disabilities. Project Success has resources that can assist teachers as they make the shift to more rigorous curriculum for students with significant cognitive disabilities. All of the content connectors can be found at the IDOE and Project Success websites. As indicated on the screen, they can be found in the resource section at projectsuccessindiana.com.
The Indiana Resource Network is made possible by the Indiana Department of Education's Special Education Grants. It is comprised of centers that provide targeted, comprehensive support to schools across the state to improve teaching and learning. Many of the resources within the Indiana Resource Network are free or at low cost to districts, schools, and teachers. All of the resources and services provided by Project Success are at no cost to districts and schools.
Project Success strives to support teachers, teams of teachers, and administrators in Indiana as they work to implement academic standards into instruction for students with disabilities. Much of our work is grounded in the content connectors, which are Indiana's alternate achievement standards, as well as designing instruction that supports access to the standards for all students. Project Success provides current research-based resources related to the content standards, instructional design, and student outcomes, and is specifically designed to meet the needs of students with disabilities. We host seasonal regional trainings with guest teachers, as well as provide targeted on-site professional development to schools, districts, based on student needs. Each professional development session is targeted to student district needs, such as locally designed assessments, unpacking content connectors, or lesson plan development. In addition, the Project Success website offers at no cost tools and resources, such as the content connectors, unpacking templates, and sample unit plans such as Lassie's and Massey's.
Let's explore where we begin when designing lesson plans aligned to the content connectors. First, we'll consider universal design for learning. Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, is a framework to improve and optimize teaching and learning for all people based on scientific insights into how humans learn. Universal Design for Learning changes the way we think, teach, engage students in learning, and how we measure what learners learn. The University of Vermont's Center on Disability and Community Inclusion had this to say: Diversity is the norm, not the exception, wherever individuals are gathered, including schools. When curricula are designed to meet the needs of the broad middle at the exclusion of those with different abilities, learning styles, backgrounds, and even preferences, they fail to provide all individuals with fair and equal opportunities to learn. Universal Design for Learning helps meet the challenge of diversity by suggesting flexible instructional materials, techniques, and strategies that empower educators to meet these varied needs. A universally designed curriculum is designed from the outset to meet the needs of the greatest number of users, making costly, time-consuming, and after-the-fact changes to curriculum unnecessary.
We see evidence of universal design for learning all around us. For example, the ramp I used to have access from the sidewalk to the Indianapolis Zoo entrance with my daughter in her stroller highlights universal design. The ramp could be used for an individual with a wheelchair, an individual pulling a wagon or pushing a stroller, or a parent with many children having access to the zoo. Another example would be closed captioning on your TV or device. A variety of individuals can benefit from closed captioning, including those who are deaf or hard of hearing, individuals learning English, people working out in the gym, or couples who fall asleep at different times.
Universal Design for Learning is a set of principles for curriculum development that give all individuals equal opportunities to learn. UDL provides flexibility and choice to students in accessing curriculum, which in turn minimizes barriers and maximizes learning for students. When thinking about implementing UDL principles into your lessons, it's important to consider both physical access and cognitive access to the curriculum.
There are 3 key areas to consider regarding universal design for learning. First, representation. Representation addresses the what of learning. We know that students differ in the way that they perceive and comprehend information. Therefore, content and information should be presented in a variety of ways. Examples of this might include highlighting vocabulary and subject matter content, video captioning and video description, utilizing graphic organizers with picture symbols, providing vocal directives with printed and visual representations. Second, we must provide multiple means of expression, or the how students interact and respond with what they are learning. Allowing multiple means of expression ensures that students can share what they know. Examples of expression might include providing alternatives for physical or verbally responding. For example, pointing, circling, or using their voice. Utilizing speech-to-text software, human dictation or recording, or responding in multiple media such as text, speech, or drawing, or using a video. Lastly, we want to consider providing multiple means of engagement. Engagement is the why of learning. Find what allows a student to feel engaged in their own learning and motivated to learn. Examples of engagement include having a choice for topics for projects or activities, simple self-monitoring checklists at a learning center or an independent workstation, providing attention-getting techniques such as visual and auditory cues, and pair peers to share small group activities and learn from each other.
If you'd like additional information on the principles of Universal Design for Learning, we hope you'll check out the Office of Special Education Short Share Number 4, Universal Design for Learning. In this short share, Daniel McNulty, the director of the Patents Project, spends about 5 minutes discussing the framework and importance of Universal Design for Learning.
As we approach lesson plan development aligned to the content connectors, we want to make sure that we are using the following components to design a lesson plan. We want to start with a grade level content connector, making that a critical or important content connector. Then we want to unpack grade level content connectors, making that a critical or important content connector. We want to focus on those critical or important content connectors. Third, we want to identify academic vocabulary. We want to make sure that is highlighted within the lesson. We want to consider core vocabulary words that might be implemented alongside that academic vocabulary within the lesson as well. We want to apply multiple means of representation, expression, and engagement using those components of Universal Design for Learning. We want to identify the materials that are accessible for all students. And we want to go over some examples and templates for the lesson planning process.
As a reminder, the content connectors are Indiana's alternate achievement standards, and they align to the Indiana academic standards. Content connectors should serve to guide the curriculum for students with significant cognitive disabilities. Each aligned content connector is a simplified, less complex version of the state standard. Content connectors cover kindergarten through high school in each of the core areas and are assessed on the I-STAR assessment. The content connectors are prioritized and highlight the necessary knowledge and skills students need to reach the learning targets at each grade level. When designing a lesson plan, you'll want to start with a critical or important content connector. Guidance documents for the content connectors can be found on the IDOE and Project Success websites. This information is helpful in planning instruction by showing the alignment of the content connectors to the Indiana academic standards, as well as the priority level of each content connector. On the Project Success website, you can access the content connectors as well as posters that align content connectors by grade levels. The posters provide a K-12 view of the content connectors by standard strand. This is useful for teachers when planning instruction and designing lesson plans for students in multiple grade bands. The posters also include the priority indicator for each content connector.
After selecting a critical content connector, it is important to unpack the content connector to determine what skills and access points are for all students. This unpacking template walks you through the unpacking process for an individual content connector. You begin by listing the specific content connector, then identifying the skills and concepts within the content connector. The skills indicate what the student should be able to do, and the concepts refer to what the student should be able to know. Let's review the unpacking process together. First, we have the content connector, which reads, describe characters in a story. An example, their traits, motivations, and feelings. When looking at the content connector, we want to consider the skills embedded within, or what the student should be able to do. So, we want to be able to identify the character in the story, or the who. We want to be able to describe the character in the story, describing their traits, their feelings, and their motivations. Next, we want to review what students should know within the content connector. Understanding the WH questions, like who the character is, understanding and naming feelings, identifying the character's emotions, understanding the WH question, such as why, and identifying the character's motivations.
After we select and unpack the content connector, we want to highlight the necessary academic vocabulary and core vocabulary aligned to that content connector. Academic vocabulary is essential for student success when implementing the content connectors. Project Success has prepared a few documents to assist in addressing academic vocabulary, including academic vocabulary documents for both ELA and mathematics. Within each key vocabulary document, you will find the embedded content connectors, the definition of key words, and examples of how you might utilize that term during instruction. We encourage teachers to use academic vocabulary in daily academic settings and to teach students how to respond to the vocabulary. Understanding the assessment vocabulary is key to students being effectively assessed on content. To make sure students have maximum exposure, embed academic vocabulary into daily lessons. Also make sure to share the specific academic vocabulary with the individuals working with the student to ensure consistent use.
Here's an example of the mathematics academic vocabulary document. You will see throughout the mathematics document the academic vocabulary found within the content connectors, a definition, and an example. For instance, the term acute angle has the definition, a mathematical term that refers to an angle less than 90 degrees. It also includes a picture of the acute angle as a reference. In addition to academic vocabulary, we also need to consider what core vocabulary can be utilized in the lesson. Similar to how we must learn to read before we read to learn, we must also first learn to communicate before we can communicate to learn.
Core vocabulary is a small set of about 400 words, which make up 80% of what we say, write, hear, or read throughout our lifetime. Core vocabulary includes pronouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, question words, interjections, demonstratives, prepositions, etc. They are not very good picture producers, so oftentimes we neglect to teach them. However, core vocabulary words are required to communicate effectively and move beyond simply making a request. Core vocabulary also allows students to grow and build their language skills naturally, one-word utterances to two-word utterances, and so on. You see examples of core vocabulary words at the bottom of your screen. Beyond core vocabulary, there is fringe vocabulary. This is a large set of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of words, but only makes up 20% of what we say, write, hear, or read. Fringe vocabulary changes throughout your lifetime depending on your interests, career, etc., whereas core vocabulary remains essentially the same throughout your life. Fringe vocabulary consists mostly of nouns and content-specific vocabulary. Because it is more specific than most core vocabulary, fringe vocabulary words are easier to depict as seen at the bottom of your screen, but it is difficult to grow and build language using only fringe vocabulary.
The first 50 core vocabulary words highlight the first words typically learned when developing language. Within the first 50 core vocabulary words, you will see terms such as go, fast, play, again, turn, and up. These core vocabulary words can easily build on one another to create short sentences. For example, the term go can be combined with fast for the student to be able to state go fast or I go fast. In this way, students are able to expand their expression using a relatively small set of words. As we continue designing our lesson plans, we want to think back to the UDL principles. We constantly want to consider providing students opportunity to apply multiple means of representation, expression, and engagement. For example, a teacher might offer alternatives for auditory and visual information or illustrate key concepts through multimedia. We also want to differentiate the ways that students can express what they know, allowing for multiple ways to respond to the teacher and optimizing access to tools and assistive technologies. And throughout the lesson plan, we want to stimulate student interest and motivation for learning by optimizing individual choice, facilitating personal coping skills and strategies, and developing opportunities for self-assessment and reflection.
For additional information and resources related to UDL, we recommend checking out the UDL Center at udlcenter.org. There you'll find a wealth of information about each of the 3 principles as well as other topics related to UDL.
As we think about the components of a lesson plan, we want to consider what skills are required for every student to have access to the selected content connector. Going back to our example, using the content connector, describe characters in a story, we might include access skills such as listening and attending to the text to identify the character in the story, describing the character by stating the character's emotions, traits, and motivations, identifying key details, and categorizing. We also want to consider barriers that student may have to have access and make progress towards grade level standards. For example, the ability to identify a character within the story might present a barrier for the student. Therefore, I would want to design a lesson plan that addresses the skill aligned towards the standard.
To assist with the lesson planning process, Project Success designed a template, which you see here, to address the essential components of a lesson plan. We've also included this lesson plan template, which has been provided by the Indiana Department of Education. Both of these templates can be found on our website, projectsuccessindiana.com, under Resources.
In summary, when we think about designing lesson plans that are aligned to content connectors, we want to make sure we are using the following components, starting with the grade level content connector and making sure that it's a critical or important content connector, unpacking the grade level content connector, identifying academic vocabulary that we want to highlight and teach throughout the lesson. Consider the core vocabulary words that can be implemented into and within the lesson. Applying the multiple means of representation, expression, and engagement. Identifying accessible materials that can be used, and taking time to review the templates and examples provided in today's webinar.
For a continued conversation on lesson plans aligned to content connectors, please join us again for our open office hours on October 17th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Lesson Plan Development Aligned to Content Connectors. We thank you for your time and look forward to collaborating with you soon.